Equity markets made a big rebound from Thursday's sell-off. Recall we traded S&Ps down below 3,000 after seeing the market march high and strong with momentum for so long. One day, everything gets corrected. We trade down below 3,000. We did see a bounce overnight, getting us back to almost 3,100 after yesterday's sell-off was quite impressive. Now, we did back off those highs as there still is concern about the economy. There still is concern about the uncertainty of where we go from here after the pandemic and as the economy starts to open. But at this point right now, there are still buyers in the equity markets despite the free fall we saw on Thursday. So those that are on the sidelines, maybe those holding cash, those looking for opportunities, maybe that felt they missed them, they are still out there, and we did see that today. So buyers in the stock market despite yesterday's big sell-off to help keep the market supported. We did lose some of that bullish momentum, but certainly it didn't turn bearish in the short term here. So right now, as we head into the weekend, it seems we're going to be very much neutral until we see what next week brings. We'll talk about that in a second. One key point here, we did see the VIX index, which spiked high north of 40 after settling last week around 25. It stayed elevated despite the fact that we saw the rally, the bounce back higher. Now, certainly we didn't get back to where we started from, but at this point, rallies are usually met with volatility selling off very hard. We didn't see that. That means the VIX index maybe has its senses up there thinking, well, maybe this isn't going to be a long-term rally, or maybe we're going to see another sell-off. Just kind of something to put on your radar that the VIX index did not collapse altogether, despite the fact that stocks rallied on Friday. And lastly, next week, the big news. Well, we have the semi-annual testimony from Fed Chair Powell to the Congress. At this point, what else can he say? He spoke this week. He's spoken basically every week in the pandemic, kind of talking about what the Fed hopes to do, what the Fed can do, what the Fed won't do. At this point, it's not really going to be talking about negative rates. It's not going to be talking about policy. Those are all pretty much set in stone. But really, what is the Fed willing to do beyond that? Because right now, the key component here that seems to be missing is jobs. And that has been sort of what the Fed has now hung its hat on, is how can it bring jobs back? How can it help the lower and middle income families that have lost those jobs, given the circumstances? And the uncertainty is still very, very high. So while the Fed does expect to keep rates near zero for the next going out to 2022, what will they do between now and then to help lift up the economy? Something they've been doing with policy changes. So at this point, the Fed, maybe some answers from the Fed chair to get into more specifics about what that looks like. But at this point, the Fed has a lot of talking to do, not a whole lot of action in the short term, as we saw this week at the FOMC meeting. But equities survived that big sell-off. It'll be interesting to see how they react to Fed Chair Powell next week.